Hi, this is Piper ZY, and this is Behind the Niche with K-Mag.
Hi everyone, my name's Anisha and we are back with K-Mag segment Behind the Niche. Today I have an amazing guest who is bringing technology and art into one, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Piper ZY. I'm an artist, a designer, and I focus a lot in digital fashion and augmented reality.
Amazing, it's great to have you today. So I want to highlight that you've had your work displayed on Times Square, which is really crazy. And you've also been featured by some giants like Samsung and Coachella. So I wanted to know what's been like the most surreal moment for you so far in your whole journey.
Yeah, I mean, all of those moments are really crazy. I mean, that is like just to see your art up there, and those directly came from different people that I met in the industry, those opportunities. And I think the thing that really feels really surreal, I can think of one event where there was a lot of people in the AR industry, and I had never been connected to that community and industry. And we were out for karaoke after like an industry event, and I'm just looking around thinking like, this is everybody doing all of these different things, and I just can't wait to see where everyone is in 10 years. And I felt like it was like, wow, this like very out there thing that I thought I was just doing on my own felt connected into this like vibrant creative energy. That was a very surreal moment.
Amazing, that's so cool. If someone had never heard of augmented reality, because I mean, it's been around for a little bit, but it's starting to gain more popularity. How would you like describe it to someone, maybe if they're not really familiar with like tech terms?
Yeah, I think it's the way that I usually try to describe it is like it's a digital layer. So you're still seeing the real world and you're still seeing the physical world, but it's like having a VFX layer, but in real time. So while you're filming something, you are getting those special effects and digital effects. And I think the easiest way really to describe it with people who are unfamiliar is just saying like a face filter, because so many people are familiar already with like tracking the face and different things you can do with the social media face filters. And I think a lot of people then don't know that it expands into a whole nother world of gaming and accessories and immersive things that really have a lot of potential in the future. So I usually just liken it to face filters.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. I mean, Snapchat's probably one of like the most popular ones, and then also I remember back in like I think like 2016, Pokemon Go was going around, and that was a whole crazy story in itself. But yeah, that's great. Kind of with like challenges and expertise, coming from a hyper-realistic painting background, which is not necessarily like traditional. I thought it was really unique for you to come from an actually like traditional art background. How did it feel to shift into like this digital world?
Yeah, it definitely informs my perspective on a lot of things and totally informs my design, because I like to have like that really detailed control of the tiny little like nuances of the lighting and the forms and just that kind of more traditional view of creating something visually. So it is interesting to transfer that into a digital world, because I felt like so much just opened up, because it's so challenging to do like, for example, oil painting, where it's just like, at least for me it was challenging, where it's like every tiny little shade and hue and all the colors have to play off of each other correctly and the texture of the paint. And then it felt like in the digital world, I didn't have the same limits. So it almost felt like cheating in a way, because it's like there's no physics, there's no limits. I can control Z it if I make a mistake. Like it felt like I could just breeze through ideas versus like the real tangible thing. So I have so much respect for that in the design, but I definitely try to bring those traditional elements to the digital world wherever it's possible to do.
Yeah, I love that. I think also like a big misconception with augmented reality is that it tries to imitate reality. I've seen a lot of people like in your comment section kind of be like, oh, this doesn't look real, but that's not necessarily your intentions. So I wanted to know like, what's your philosophy when you create something that isn't necessarily meant to look real, but still needs to feel real?
Yeah, totally. I always think of it as like an alternate dimension. I love the idea of like questioning reality, of like, okay, if we have dreams, like what realm is that? Or like memories, or just like time and space, those kind of alternate dimensions. And I love when something is a little unsettling in that way, because I feel like it plays off of like the human psychology of like how we perceive things and how we're wired to see if things are real or not. I love that kind of like shock value of, is this real or not? And then once people understand like how it's made, I never want people to think something that I'm making that's digital is physical. I try to label it really well, but I do like the first reaction of thinking like, could this be real? And if it was going to be real, what realm is it from? I like that like fantastical realm.
Yeah, I love that. And I think also like with like virtual reality too, I think that's such a interesting thing to like play around with that like immersive experience that you get in like a 3D world with wearing that headset. But with augmented reality, we don't really have like that headset or anything. It's like through your phone. So yeah, I love that. You also work with like different tools, like you've worked with Metaspark, Blender, After Effects, Nomad Sculpt. What's one technical challenge that taught you the most patience?
Yeah, back when Instagram filters were kind of at their peak, it was a small, and this is true of like any of the social platforms because there's so many effects, it was a really small file size. And so I would have an idea because I felt that kind of limitless, like I can use any material, I can create anything, like I can make heavy metal materials like light as air, but there was a constraint of file size. So I would be trying to like fit and shrink things into like a 4 megabyte effect for the whole thing. Most of them that I had posted in a lot of my like more popular videos, the entire everything, like all the animations, all the 3D was under 4 or 5 megabytes. And I think like that limited so much because even like brands would come to me and they'd want something that was super fantastical and super detailed. And it's like we as the creators were trying to make it work with that tiny file size. But it helped a lot, like helped me evolve a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I know file sizes I know is always a issue that everyone has, even like when I'm editing like small things right now and then I try to upload an image and try to fix something and it's like, oh, the file size is too big.
Yeah.
So definitely understand that from a certain level. Also from like some of the stuff that you've actually created, like your flesh and bone bracelet, which I think was so cool. You also had that doomsday cloak coat, which I also thought was really beautiful. So bouncing off of those two things that you've made and some of your other work as well, your work tends to fuse like beauty with like, I would describe it as maybe like unsettling tension in a way. So how do you like see your designs as like wearable narratives?
Yeah, I love that translates to and comes across because it's like, I love the idea of a full concept. I'm so inspired by like the traditional runway collections where it's a full concept. I love Alexander McQueen, like the full thing. I love having the whole backstory in it, like the whole world building around it. Even just for one accessory, if it's like that one jacket or like one ring, I want to place it like in a whole entire world. I love this science fiction world building. I think for me, that's like how I concept things, and I end up making better things when the whole world is like fleshed out a little bit. I'm so glad that comes across in things because that's exactly how I'm thinking about it too.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of think the same way that you do in that sense, because like I like to write, and like whenever I'm like writing and maybe there's like a certain thing that needs to symbolize something, I always have to like, what's the backstory behind this? So I love that you like talk about that and mention that. So about your creations as well, again, they don't sit on screens. They like they move, they shimmer, they react. So what role does interactivity play in your storytelling?
Yeah, I love the idea of motion and things. I think a lot of things I've worked with is like the idea of constructing and deconstructing, and it's just so cool to be able to do that in the digital world in a way that's just not possible because I love the anti-gravity effects. I think a lot of the like novelty or like virality of things I've made has been just from using like the basic anti-gravity things where it's like there would just be no way for a diamond to be floating or a ring to be floating, but then when it's floating, it's like catches something that's very new. Like people are seeing it like, oh, they've never seen something that's floating when it's just like the lack of gravity. And I love to be able to work with that and like being used to working in physical, different types of physical items. Like it's just so freeing to think, okay, I can take this little ring and totally deconstruct it, but make it seem like it's actually being worn.
Yeah, I love that. And I think another thing that's great about your page is that even though you do kind of get those comments of like, that's not real, or like, how does that work? I love that you show the processes too of like how you like create it through those like digital platforms that you do use. Cause I forget the name of it, but I think it was like your bone rings and you were like showing like the green screen behind it, and how you like had to like paint your finger technically on it for like that one bit. I thought that was like really cool. So yeah, I love that you talk about it. So your designs for like augmented reality, glasses, rings, coats, they're like digital relics. So if someone were to find them from like 100 years from now, what would you want them to understand about our era?
Oh, this is so cool. I think it's a really interesting era where it's like physical is merging into digital in so many ways. And I feel like it comes across so differently based on like the individual artist's voice and what different tiny pieces within the type of media people like. And I just love like to see the body of work of like the whole AR industry, or at least like other artists I'm aware of. I love to see like that collective body of work, because it's so interesting to see that like, okay, me coming from my background with my other art like interests, it comes across this way digitally, but then somebody with like a music background or like a dance background, what they bring to the digital world is like completely different. I feel like it's such an opportunity that this is like such a creative place where it's like we're all kind of moving our existing skills into the digital world. So I feel like it's a chance for like everybody to take their perspective and put it into the digital world. So I hope that it would be viewed as like this creative explosion if people are looking back on the era when people are getting into digital fashion and like VR, AR.
Yeah, I love that, especially since it's kind of blossomed in, I'd say, like this decade and like partially the last decade. So we really are kind of the start of the augmented reality world. So I love that. And also, you've said that your work isn't completely about realism. So what would you add about it? Like function, emotion, you mentioned science fiction.
Yeah, I love to break the rules. I feel like I like that kind of tension. I like the conversation where it's like, and that's what I love about like my artistic inspirations too in fashion. I get a lot of inspiration from like music videos. I've always loved like very out there creative music videos that are immersive in world building too. I think just having that conversation where it's like, what if the world looked like this? And you're kind of presenting that to the audience. And for me, it's equally as fun if I present that version and people say, oh, I love it, it's beautiful. And if I present it and people go, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, this is like, delete this right now. Like to me, that's like equally fun because it's the conversation of taking the world and distorting it and then seeing what people think.
Yeah, I love that. Moving on a little bit, so I wanted to talk about AI a little bit because you've also mentioned it on your platform too, and it's a rising topic in our world and it's becoming more prominent. So generative AI is expanding rapidly. So I wanted to know, like, how do you see it either enhancing or challenging the way that you approach augmented reality and the digital fashion world?
Yeah, I personally don't use generative AI. I feel like I have, but I know so many people who do. And I see so many results of generative AI that I think are really compelling. Like I know artists where like I see it and it's coming from them. I can tell it's coming from them. It feels right. Like it feels right, but at the same time, I feel like I do like support the artistic view of like we're already as creatives like fighting for our role, and the way that I think the tech itself is very cool, but then it gets misused and can be used to replace people or just scam imagery or steal imagery. Like that's definitely the camp that I'm in, just because I have I have been the person drawing, and I think eventually maybe that view will be seen as like really antiquated. Even in my view and my biases, I think maybe eventually people will think of it as like, if you're rejecting Photoshop, I don't know how history will view it, but like from the person who sat there trying to draw an eye like 100 times, it does make me sad to see like, especially big artists with the capital going for AI generated things versus hiring a creative. I think just like, it does overlap with like political and ethical views. It brings in so many other topics because it's like, the fight of the creative, the plight of the creative, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I know art isn't like physical, traditional art, I know isn't going anywhere. But I think, like you said, it'll be especially interesting to see what happens in these next couple of decades, because I know like when AI started getting popular, I was like beginning to like mid high school, and that's when ChatGPT just exploded everywhere. And now the generation after me, it's like that's like the first big technological thing that they have. So now they're growing up with AI. I didn't grow up with AI, and I know you didn't grow up with AI either. So yeah, like you said, I think it will be very, very interesting to see like, will we become the minority in like our thought process or not? So
yeah,
we'll have to see what happens in the next couple of years. I wanted to get your take on something. So, what's your take on the growing desire to turn these digital concepts into physical products? And will code be like wearable in the future?
That's really cool. I think like it'll create different niches, because I already see people who like were doing things in the AR world and then they pivoted to like 3D printing. So it's like those skills and those type of manufacturing skills and like small scale manufacturing skills have created a certain type of fashion product for them. But then I've also known people who were like into fiber arts before they were even into digital, and now they've kind of gone back to fiber arts and like trying to kind of use digital design in that. So I think it'll create these different types of paths of creatives where you can combine whatever technology you want to use or not to create even a physical product. Because I think now it's going to be harder, especially, I mean, for big brands especially, I think are using so much digital innovation in their design even. I think it's going to be less common to just be doing something completely physical, where it's like start to finish, I sketched on paper, and then I'm like knitting it and blocking it and finishing it that way. I mean, I love that. Like that's like what many generations in my family did too. But I think it is like now where you can pick and choose how futuristic and how digital you want to be, which creates really cool results, I think.
Yeah. As you mentioned, like different niches, I thought it was funny because obviously I do have you on Behind the Niche, but I feel like in the near future, this isn't really gonna be like a niche anymore.
Yeah.
There might be niches within augmented reality, but like augmented reality as itself, I don't know if it'll be as niche anymore. So that was just a funny thought that I have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you've already made an impact, you know, like in the metaverse and at Coachella. So I wanted to know, where do you think augmented reality design will be from like 5 years?
Yeah, I think like if people think that it kind of took a hit with introductions to AI and people conflate the two so much just who are not involved with it, that I think the perception of it is like, oh, the idea of the metaverse or the idea of AR, VR was this like flop. And now AI is the thing. And that might be where the investments are or where the hype or excitement is, but there's this whole infrastructure building that I think includes AI and AR and VR that will complement each other as they both develop and get stronger. And especially the more practical uses, I think, I love the creative things, but I think on the business end, like when the more practical applications come about for AR, VR, whether it's like navigating or you're walking down the street and you can see a restaurant's rating or those kinds of practical things, especially like the more assistive or accessibility related things become available, I think it will resurge back to where people don't think it's like a flop concept. I think there was so much hype around it, it kind of will even out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally understand. I wanted to dive a little bit into some of your actual like work and question you about it. So I want to know, what's the origin story for something like your Dancing Diamonds ring? And like, does it start as like a sketch, like a sound, like a thought? You kind of mentioned your process a little bit, but I wanted to know, like, for a specific project, what does that really look like?
Yeah, for that one, I was just thinking about movement, and I was trying to challenge because the first one I had thought about movement in with a ring was with the gears that were just spinning. I just put like a couple gears in the ring and I had them inside the finger, and kind of the novelty of that was oh, I can actually put the elements of the ring inside of the finger because the physics just don't exist with AR. But then I wanted to push it further and challenge that to be more graceful, because I just like on one axis had rotated the gears spinning, and I thought, okay, what if I then kind of refine the movement too and have it be something that's moving in a more beautiful way versus just, hey, this spins. And so then that came those kind of like dancing elements, and that's where I got the name from too, of just like, it's more of a graceful, intentional dance to try to elevate what I was making within that medium.
Yeah, I love that. It's a pretty name for that, so I think that was great. You've merged, fine art, fashion, and future tech. Was there ever a moment where you realized that maybe there isn't anybody really kind of doing what I am doing right now?
I feel like this happened almost opposite, because I was posting for so long, feeling like that, and I was thinking not only am I just the one doing this, but also nobody cares is really how I felt, because I posted I made a digital fashion music video over 10 years ago, and it got not even 100 views, and dare I say 5 likes, probably not even. And so I was just this kind of weirdo doing this out into the ether. But then I got connected with people who had been doing AR and had been pioneering it for years and years. And it was this feeling of, oh, actually it feels good that now there is a community of people that I'm aware of that actually kind of have been trying to do the same things and have been playing with the same concepts. It was kind of the reverse. And I still love to feel I love the concept that if people see my video, they can tell it's something that I made. And that's that's always my aspiration in art, is that it has a distinct style to it. But at the same time, it is nice to know that people do care about AR in general, because I was just this weirdo for so long.
No, I completely understand that, and especially when you're, I would say that you're probably one of the more prominent TikTok influencer figures talking about augmented reality. But now that you do have this platform and a lot of people notice and see you, then you kind of also open up the world for other people who are maybe have already been doing AR to start also talking about it on their platforms as well. So I think that's great, and I'm glad that you did find a community of people that you could connect with and actually work on projects with. But yeah, wrapping up, I just wanted to ask you a little fun personal question. If someone gave you a blank billboard in Times Square and said, no rules, do whatever, what would you put up there?
This is so it's so interesting, because I love a good marketing campaign. That's part of my background too. So I love a good memorable, shocking kind of campaign. So it's tempting to just have some kind of provocative statement or something, but I think going along with the brand, I am working on a collection of physical items. So I think I would have to use that opportunity to promote that and something along with that concept, even though that's kind of a boring answer.
It's all good. But yeah, it's been amazing speaking with you today, Piper. I really hope that you continue to open doors for people who are interested in augmented reality, and that you take it in the direction that you're passionate about. And yeah, I just hope that you continue to have success in this community, and it keeps on expanding in the right way. But yeah, this has been Behind the Niche with Piper ZY.